Hello, everyone. Welcome to YNS Live with NFL Thread, our new series Pivot. I am Juliette Hahn and my special co-host, Cynthia Zordich. And then we have the most amazing guest. I can't wait for you guys to dive into this. Joe and Brionna Barksdale. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So everyone knows that has, been in our studio that there is a way that you guys can simulcast this and send this out to other people because people need to hear this story. So if you guys all go down to the two little lines at the bottom, you will be able to see where it says broadcast to the world. You can do that and that will share it with your friends, your family. We can all do it kind of now together if you guys want. You can email people, you can text people, you can send it to people here in Fireside. But what it does is it really gets out this story. It gets it to more people where people can follow along and learn what Joe and Bri are doing right now. Just to give you a little background, Joe was in the league for many years, and he and Brionna met when they were younger. Bri is in real estate. Joe is now a comedian and a musician and newly diagnosed with autism. So the reason why we were so excited to have these guys on the show was because of Pivot, right? Cynthia and I, we introduced the show on Monday and we talked about all the different transitions. And I would love, Cynthia, you just to touch a little bit about when the clock runs out. But these guys are the perfect first guest because how many pivots Joe has taken being in the league and then being out of the league. And we're going to get into the story and Bri being with him throughout all of these different pivots. And Brionna herself pivoting, being in real estate and having to take her business every state they went. And so, Cynthia, if you just want to jump in really quickly, and then we're going to dive into your story, Joe and Bri, promise. But just tell the audience a little bit about, when we decided to take YNS Live with NFL Thread, and we decided to take Pivot into a different journey. Just give us a little background on that, please.
No problem. And you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. You are excellent first guests. And it's so exciting to have you here together. But really, it started when my husband was at the end of his career, when you just know that it's time, it's probably your last one or two seasons. And at the time, back in the day, we didn't really talk about transition. We didn't talk about what it was like after the game. You avoided the subject and you avoided each other. And it was something that I dove back into then and created When the Clock Runs Out, where I interviewed thousands of NFL players, got quotes from them all, and actually sat down with Bill Lyon, a sports writer out of Philadelphia, to interview 20 of them and to find out their story of transition. What's it going to be like when we're done, when we're out of the game and we're removed from this life? And my husband is removed from something that he's done for so long. And it was just really to help our family, but others. And I think what I found at that time was there's so many stories and we're all so different. And there's no right or wrong way to go through transition. There's only your way, but yet we can still learn from each other in this storytelling. So I'm so happy that you guys are here. And I would love to start at the very beginning because I love the how we met stories. And I know you guys go way, way, way back. And when you met, I think it was third grade. So if you don't mind, if we could start with, how you guys met and how you knew that you were the person for each other.
We didn't know that when we first met each other. We first met in junior high, middle school. I was trying to, I don't know. I met her younger brother. And I guess I was one of the few kids at the school that was nice to him. He wanted me to meet his sister. And that was our first time meeting. It was very uneventful.
It was uneventful.
No, I love that. No, I love that. And Bri, I'm sure you're like, wow, great, thanks.
It was very uneventful because, and so, or I should say a speech impediment. So he couldn't pronounce his L's and his name was Blake Blackwell. So he would say, my name is Blake Blackwell. So a lot of people picked on him. So when he first approached me with Joe, I'm the oldest of a lot. So when he first approached me, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if I have to beat this kid up, he's a lot bigger than me. And so he comes over and he goes, I just want you to meet my friend. we play soccer and he's so nice and he this and he that. And I just remember being like, hey, thanks for playing with my brother. And he's like, oh, you're welcome. And they just run off. And I was like, okay, he's cool. And then later I'm like, but aren't you in my grade? He's like, yeah, but your brother's really cool. But it was very uneventful in terms of like the situation itself. But that was the first time we met.
Oh, but that's so sweet though. I mean, my goodness, like, of course you had to love that he was being kind to your brother, right?
Right. So, and also as Cynthia said, I mean, one of the things that I think, and we can jump into this, Joe, that really stood out to me is that you were not someone that played flag football from an early age. Football wasn't even on your radar. You were really into school, and when you wanted to go to college, you were thinking of certain colleges, and someone very special to you said, why don't you look at football, because it could do something for you when you're trying to enter into the sports, into school. And that really stuck out to me because my family, we're dyslexic. And so school was really hard for me, but I did play sports. So I actually used sports to get me into college, and I played 2 sports in college. But because my grades were really terrible, it was, I was able to use that sports, but you kind of did it the other way. So I was really fascinated into that. Can you share a little bit about that journey?
Football was a pivot. Growing up, I was a STEM kid: science, technology, engineering, and math. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to design car interiors for either Ford or General Motors or Chrysler. My first scholarships were for engineering. My first full ride scholarship was an engineering scholarship, very academic. I got kicked out of engineering camp. It was a residential camp over the summer. It was autistic behavior that got me removed from the camp. Didn't know I was autistic back then. I needed something to do over the summer to stay out of trouble. And I decided to try to get in shape by joining the football team. And that's how I started playing football. I was like 15.
I mean, that just is so incredible, because it really is, so many of the stories that we hear are really awesome. And the fact that you just said, and this is something that we're going to really talk about, is you didn't know that you were autistic. You didn't know that was autistic behavior, and the adults in your life kind of let you down. It was like, oh, here, this is something that he's doing, so we're going to kick him out. In my journey, which we talk about all the time, is in school, I used to get told I wasn't trying hard enough, and I was trying so hard. And I just remember all the time the teacher telling me that, and just getting crushed, but always prevailing, always being like, no, that's not who I am. I am better than that. And I am trying. And then figuring out I was dyslexic later in life was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So, tell us, when you then started football, was it something, I love that you already knew that you wanted to do this engineering. I mean, I think that's so fascinating. Where do you think that came from? The engineering love?
I don't like working with people. So, being an engineer, I could do a lot of things by myself. You don't necessarily have to be in teams all the time, and there was just a certain solitude to the job that drew me to it. I've never been the most like outgoing person or anything like that. So, in my mind, it was a good way to make good money and stay out the way.
Right. So when you started playing football, did you love it immediately, or was it something that you were like, I know that this is going to be, I'm good at it, right? This is something, obviously God gave me a gift here. Where was your mindset with that?
Football was just probably one of the first times that I was around adults that were happy to see me. Having nothing to do with like falling in love with. I mean, I fell in love with being good. I mean, I've always been competitive. I fall in love with being the best at what I do. But in terms of the actual sport, no. No. It was, is the word circumstantial?
Yeah,
it was more circumstantial than anything. And like I said, I'm very competitive. So I feel like it's the competition in me that, enabled me to be good at it. But yeah, like my parents always treated me like a burden. They always talked about how expensive I was to clothe and feed. That spread out to grandparents and aunts and uncles and that kind of thing. And after a while, you just don't like existing. So being on the football field at least made me feel like I had a purpose in my life at the time. Like I deserved to be on the planet, and I wasn't just taking, I was giving.
I mean, that's so beautifully said. And I'm really got the chills. Cynthia, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I feel like, in reading up a bit to get to know you, it feels like that at that pivotal moment when you were introduced to the game, it was by somebody that you felt that really cared about you, that really didn't see you as a burden, but somebody to love. And so I just wanted to know, like, if you wanted to share a little bit about your mentor, Charlton, and talk about him and what he meant to you at that time in your life.
So I started playing football very late. I didn't watch sports. I don't watch sports. I didn't watch sports when I played sports. Honestly, I think the sports are very, I know no one asked, but I think the sports are very redundant and repetitive. If there's a Super Bowl next year, that means that this Super Bowl doesn't matter because you're not going to remember it next year anyway. But I say that to say, I don't know what this coach saw. I just remember we were selling waters selling water. The school was in downtown Detroit. We were selling waters on the side of the street to raise money to go to football camp. And he asked me if my dad was, who was coming to pick me up. My dad was actually coming to pick me up that day. I usually caught the bus. He told me next time your dad comes and picks you up, I need to talk to him. So him and my dad were talking for like 2 or 3 hours. And he's flipping through this Athlon sports magazine and all these colleges. You hear about these colleges, but you never actually see yourself going to them. He's like, I can get your son a scholarship to any of these colleges. And I'm just sitting there like, bullshit. I'm sorry, but
No, you can curse. Remember, this is open. Be yourself.
Bullshit, bro. Like, scholarships. I don't even know what position I play. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But yeah, 2 years later, I was a Parade All-American, and I had all those college scholarships. That man, his name was Charleston Fives. I don't know if I said that already. But yeah, he was pretty much everything for me during that time and even beyond, as I went to college and even, to the NFL. Like, he bought me my first car, dating advice and so forth. I got from him. He taught me how to haggle. So, yeah, he was everything that I needed him to be and more when I needed it. So
beautiful. And Brionna, at this point now, as you're getting into high school, are you guys now dating? Is this something where you guys are together already?
Y'all really trying to push this high school?
No. Joe and I were really good friends in high school.
Okay.
We actually have a mutual friend named Carla. And so we all lived on the west side of Detroit. Our school was downtown. And so Carla's parents were like, hey, we work downtown. If you drop Joe and Bree off at the house, we will take all three to school because, all of our parents worked full time. And so Carla's a musician, phenomenal, but they did not have like a TV or anything. So every morning, Joe and I got dropped off and we would sit across each other, like on the couch. There was a grand piano and a fireplace, and me and Joe every morning. Carla was notoriously late. And so essentially, Joe and I used to end up going to school without Carla. So one parent would take Joe and I to school, and then Carla would get a ride with the other parent. And so, I will say for the first couple of weeks, no words were exchanged. And so finally, one morning, I'm like, so how are you? And you could tell he was like, oh, she's going to talk. Because he is an introvert. And so we started talking, but we became really good friends. And on my 16th birthday, I got my license. And it's funny because in retrospect, I don't know how quickly I would be to put my kid in the car with somebody who got their license on their 16th birthday. His mom was like, hey, can Joe ride with you? And I'm like, sure, why not? So we started riding to school together every day, starting when I turned 16. And then, like I said, best friends, he had his girlfriends, I had my boyfriends, but we always hung out. And I don't know, those car rides, we joke about them now, but my sister, she came to that school 2 years later, but we just all became really close in the car, listening to music, cracking jokes. And then I found out he was catching the bus after school. And so I was like, well, hey, I'll just study till you get out of football practice and then I can get you a ride home so you don't have to catch the bus. So we would do that. But we were really just friends all throughout high school. Yeah.
That's a good friend.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I mean, and so now I want to take it a little bit because I know we really want to get into the musician, your newly diagnosed autism and Autism Speaks and what you're doing in the community and sharing your story. Because again, your story is going to help so many people. And I really, truly believe that's why God gave you the football gift, right? To put you on this pedestal, to be able to then to share your story, to really touch people in all corners of places. So after you guys, when you were drafted, and you were playing in the league. So Cynthia, is that okay if I jump all the way to there?
Yes.
You go with that? Yeah. So when you were in the league, and then I know, which one of the things that I loved is that you were playing, but there was a couple times, you had you realizing that you were suffering from depression. Can you take us through that, if that's okay?
I didn't realize it. There were different doctors, and it started in college. There were different doctors who would be associated with the team who would try to lead me in that direction. Like, hey, you ever thought about taking care of your mental health? Things don't seem to be, and every time I'm like, bro, I'm not crazy. Get the fuck out my face. Like, I'm not. You're not about to put me on medicine. I'm not about to be me with a therapist. I don't need that. Like, I had a normal childhood like everybody else. And it wasn't until I actually accepted my diagnosis and really started looking back at my childhood objectively that I'm like, oh, I'm really fucked up. But yeah, I was diagnosed with, thank you. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. But because, like Brionna said, I'm very introverted, I don't really talk to people. I assumed everybody got molested when they were younger. I thought everybody was neglected by, people who were supposed to be there for them. I thought everybody was abused, and I thought I was just not handling it the right way. I thought I needed to suck it up more. But it turns out I was just mentally ill, and the things that I thought were normal are not normal.
Right. And I mean, you hear that so much with people with trauma and that suffered those kind of things, that you didn't realize that wasn't normal. And so you being able to share that and get to a place to share that, again, you're going to help so many people realize, wait a second, I need to address this, because mental health is something that's is really important. And Brionna, where were you in this aspect with Joe in this part of his journey?
I think I was always there. I won't say I was so much from a doctor's standpoint per se. There was things that he would say that would be alarming, but Joe's always been really comfortable talking to me. So I would just be like, hey, I know today's a bad day, but let's, try again tomorrow, even when we were friends. So I think, throughout the years, I'll never forget, there was a game, I always say he has his guardian angels. But there was a game when he was with with the Rams. And it was a bad game, but I wasn't living with the team yet. I was still in Michigan. So I was like, oh, this game, I don't know if you've ever done this, Cindy. I'm like, this game is bad. I'm going to just cut it off and go to sleep, because he'll call me after and we can talk about it. But I knew his position well. I knew what it should look like. It was just not a good game. So I go to sleep and I wake up, my phone is blowing up, and all of his fraternity brothers are calling me where are you? And I'm like, in Michigan, They're like, you need to get to St. Louis. Joe's texting us some things that are concerning. And I'm like, okay, but I also know Joe. So I'm like, okay, I'll see what I can do. But one of his teammates called me and he goes, hey, I'm really concerned about Joe. I'm going to make him sleep on my couch tonight unless you can get to St. Louis. And I was like, what? And he goes, and I don't even know how he got my number, to be honest with you. But I was like, okay. So I remember driving to the airport and I get on the next flight. And this teammate, the whole time he's texting me, even when I landed, I'm like, hey, I made it to St. Louis. He goes, Joe wants to get food. I'm so sorry. Is there somewhere you can sit until, he can get to you? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I'll never forget Joe's face when he saw me, because he was like, I was thinking that he might be like, oh, wow, she really cares. Or I don't know how she got here. His first thought was like, oh, man, I'm in trouble now. Because he just thought the things I said got her here. But that was the first time I think it was alarming for me. Because I'm so many people were so concerned that I hopped on a flight to get there. And obviously he was fine, but it was, again, alarming.
Right.
And I think the Rams was the first team that made him actually talk with the doctor. Did they make you? I don't know how that works.
I mean, they didn't make me, but that was the first time that I talked to a doctor and tried medicine, that kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
There was a situation where it's a kind of nice, brings into the music into it. I thought this was really amazing, is that there was I don't know if it was that situation or maybe later, that there came a time, Joe, where you opened up to Brionna to tell her exactly how you were feeling and how you had this feelings of depression and, lacking self-worth. And you both went to bed, you went to bed, and Brionna, you stayed up and started to write. And can you guys talk about that collaboration? I just think that shows,
most beautiful,
and it really shows how close you guys are, and it shows the friendship first, and then becoming the couple.
Okay, yeah. So the story I just shared was like 2014, and so we had Kennedy in December of 2016, and then I vividly remember watching this movie. It was like Perks of Being a Wallflower or something like that.
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, before 14. So Fobbs died in 2013. 2014 was when I flew out to St. Louis. So this is 2017. We watched this movie, and I do think that there are sometimes things that like you can put deep down inside, but then something will trigger that to come back up. And in this movie, there was I'm not good with recalling movies and facts, but there was a child the main character was being molested by his aunt. Who died in a car crash. And he suppressed it. And so after the movie, Joe, he was like, can you talk a little about that? 'Cause I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, I was just pretty much. I mean, the recollection came like out of nowhere. Like I'm like, who forgets getting molested that long? Like, you know what I mean? Like who forgets that kind of thing? Like who pushes those things down? What is molestation anyway? Oh shit, I was molested. Like,
Wow.
So yeah, again, I didn't know the thought process. I only got the, hey, I think I was molested part of that story. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, we had Kennedy. She was probably about 3 months old. And so we're getting ready to go to bed. This is in February. And he goes, yeah, again, Joe's very open and honest with me. And I love that. Like, he doesn't have to censor himself. He goes, I kind of just want to kill myself. And I was like, oh, like, okay, where did that come from? And he's like, I don't know. I just, I've been thinking it for a while, and he's just talking, really. It's dark. He can't see me. I can't see him. He's just talking, baby sleep. And so I'm like, honestly, I'm like, great. I just had this baby. She's 3 months old, and now you want to kill yourself. So, that's what I was thinking as a wife and mom. But then part of me is like really concerned because I'm like,
right.
Where do we go from here? And so he goes to sleep, but I couldn't sleep then because one, she was 3 months. I'm still feeding every couple hours. And my mind is just racing. So I was like trying to put into words everything he told me because he had just started, he didn't just start playing guitar, but he just gotten really serious about learning more, got a teacher. So I was like, well, maybe we can just write a song about this. And I wrote down the words because I'm more of a lyrics person. He's more of a music person. And so I was like, when he woke up, I'm like, hey, last night I wrote the words to this song. I said, I kind of hear the music, but obviously I don't play instruments, so you can help me with that. And so as I said the words, he kind of wrote the music to it. And that was the first song. It was called Journey to Nowhere. And yeah, that was.
And it's beautiful. If anybody could go to Spotify and listen, the lyrics are beautiful. Your guitar playing is beautiful. Your voice is beautiful. Everything about it. And the fact that you guys created this beautiful music together
is so
based
special.
on this type of conversation. Wow. It's like,
it's not on Spotify anymore.
What is it?
He took it down.
You did? Well, I just listened to it recently.
You can get it from what, Amazon?
Yeah, I think there are places where you can listen to it, but you know how it is. You put out your first project and then you realize, oh, I sing better now.
Got it.
It's the same with podcasting. When I go back to listen to my first episode, I chuckle. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah. That happens in all crafts, right? That's true.
Right. That's right.
If we could back up a little bit, because I think this is important too, because you created beautiful music based on honesty and opening up. And the fact that you wrote lyrics, I think it's because you already knew, Brionna, that music was an outlet. And Joe, if you don't mind sharing how that came about, because I think that it's a beautiful story, your conversation with Coach Jeff Fisher in talking about your feelings and possibly looking for a creative outlet for what you were going through during a time, I think, of mourning when you lost your beloved mentor and coach.
Yeah. Like I said before, he was everything I needed him to be when I needed him to be. Died suddenly on a Thursday night. Brionna actually drove by the accident. We didn't know. We were actually both on the phone with each other at the time, and she was because she was going to Michigan State, right? Mm-hmm. She was driving home from Lansing back to Detroit, and she's like, "Man, it's this really bad car accident. I'm gonna pray for whoever it is, that kind of thing." And I'm just like, "Man, car accidents happen all the time. People will be fine, whatever." We end up getting off the phone. I go to sleep. I wake up like 3 a.m. People are calling me. I'm like, "Man, I got practice tomorrow." So I cut my phone off.
Right.
And it wasn't until I woke up the next morning, and my agent kept calling me, and he told me that that Fives was dead. And I'm like, "No, he's not." But yeah, he was. He was dead. I remember. I didn't want to believe. I mean, when anyone hears about a death, they don't want to believe it. I think for me, it was just a little extra because, even now, when I think about who I would call, if something good happened, or if I needed some advice or that kind of thing, he's dead. So that was hard, going through that season. But at the end of the season, Jeff Fisher, met with me in his office, thanked me for pushing through what I was going through for the team, and he told me that I needed something to do over the off season to help me process these things, something to take up some mental space. And I told him, I was a really good Call of Duty player back then. So I was like, I'm going to be in the game, Nothing more than a video game for this one. My son plays guitar. You seem to be really into music. Have you thought about, playing guitar? I did used to play saxophone when I was in middle school. I tried out for this jazz band and I didn't make it. I was close, but I didn't make it. And ever since then, I was just I kind of gave up on music. But this was my first time thinking about getting back into it. And I knew I didn't want to play saxophone, so figured I'd try out the guitar. And now I play guitar, bass, keyboard, drum machine. I produce, songwrite.
That's amazing. And so I want to kind of take it from here because this I think is a great pivot. And I love that we've used that word now twice in here. But I remember something that I was reading that you went to Kobe Bryant and said to him, when is time for me to hang up my cleats? And can you share a little bit about what that conversation was and then how you decided to exit the league on your own terms?
Yeah, I developed a relationship with him over the past couple of years. He came and spoke to the team. As shy as I am, I wasn't letting that opportunity slip through my hands. So,
right.
With a little push and encouragement from my wife, a big kick in the butt. But
good for you.
I told him that I don't. I mean, I'm always honest. I'm like, hey, I don't have a mentor. I'm not looking for a dad, but I would love some advice on some things. And we ended up, he told me to come to his office on my next off day. We went to his office. And I remember, first time we met, we were probably in there for 5-6 hours. I never, to this day, I have not met anybody that understands me and got me like he did.
Oh, amazing.
Very depression. It was like meeting yourself. And I remember asking him, we were talking about something, and I'm like, when did you? Oh, because he had all these plans, these books that he had written out, movies, 10, 20-year plans down the road. And I'm like, when did you decide that you wanted to retire? And he said, when I was thinking about this stuff more than I was thinking about basketball, I realized that I'm doing a disservice to myself and the game. So it's time to, I do what I'm the most passionate about, and this is what I'm the most passionate about. And I was never passionate about football. I was passionate about being good at football. There's a difference. I was looking for, the reason I was passionate about being good is because I wanted some accolades. The reason I wanted some accolades is to prove to myself that I deserve to be alive. You know what I mean? Get that reassurance and validation that I did not get growing up from strangers who don't care about me anyway. But yeah, that that was where that passion to be good came from. Like, if I can make a Pro Bowl, then I can prove to myself that I should not kill myself. Those kind of things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So powerful.
During that conversation, I realized this is what I'm passionate.
Right. That validation is incredible. In seeking validation after everything that you had been through, that you had suppressed, but even that you continued to feel. It's like, it's great that you understand that. And it's great that you could separate like what you're doing from what it is like that you need to do, in realizing that, well, what I need to do now is music, because music is allowing me to pour out these feelings. And I think I love one of the quotes, I think it was in the LA Times, that you said, blues is like talking without having to say anything. And so I feel like you are just getting to know yourself more and more, and understanding that there's a lot in there that needs to come out, but you don't necessarily want to talk about it all the time. You just want to let it out, right?
I think for me, it was more, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. For me, it was more, the reason I was trying to hold on to football, like, subconsciously, was because that was the last living thing I had of Fobs. Like, when football was done, he was dead. You know what I mean?
Got it.
And I think that was part of that internal struggle about, should I leave or should I stay too? Because we talked about me going to the Pro Bowl. You know, we talked about me being in the playoffs. We talked about these things.
Right.
And I think that was, you know, I mean, it's not like I just skipped off the field, you know, with the with the spring in my step, you know, and a basket full of roses, and rode into the sunset. Like, it was more like, you know, tearing something out of my body, you know, that I knew I wouldn't be able to put back, and like putting it down in hopes that something better would come in the future.
Wow. I mean, that is so powerfully said. And the fact that you had another mentor that also passed. I mean, you've had a lot of loss.
Not mentors anymore. No, I'm just playing.
But I mean, you had you've had so much loss, though. And the fact that you keep, and, you know, and in my head, what I just keep thinking is that you have Bree by your side, that she's been a constant, she's been a steady, she's been there. And so, Bree, for you to go through the loss with Joe and, you know, and his coach, and then another mentor, and then leaving the game, where were you, and how were you there supporting? I'm sure I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to let you say, but where were you in your mindset there?
I mean, I think it was different each time. When Coach Fobbs passed, we were both very young, and, you know, similar to, you know, certain memories being etched in your head, you know, that was, I always tell Joe, like, that was kind of like a This Is Us moment for anybody familiar with that show, just to be like on the phone with Joe past the car accident scene. And it was just surreal, because I remember being stuck in traffic. I sent him a picture of the traffic. I'm like, I said, I'm stuck in traffic, but I always have a quote that I tell people. I was like, you can either be stuck in traffic or the reason for the traffic jam. So you got to be thankful that, you know, you're just stuck in traffic. Right. And, you know, the next day was another situation. I used to be, he'll tell you, I think we got closer then, because I was very corporate America. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had graduated. I was already in management. And
on the NBA.
Yeah, I walked into my boss's office and I'm like, hey, I got to go to St. Louis. And so I'm going to be leaving in the next 5 minutes. I understand that, you know, you need me here, but I have to go. And I'll send you guys an email. And she was pretty much like, okay, because I don't do stuff like that. But I was like, I have to get to St. Louis, because at that time his phone was off, so nobody could reach him. So nobody knew what was going on. And so I got there as quickly as I could. So again, very young though, and not really necessarily knowing how to navigate that. I think now where I'm at, I would have been like, hey, we should probably speak to a therapist or something. And in my mind, I'm like, put it all on the field. Take the anger out, because Coach Files was his pregame and postgame talk. So now I'm like, okay. I used to get to talk about like, hey, did you see the game? What did you think? Now it's like, well, how was this play? Did you see when this happened with Vaughn or like Clay? And I'm like actually having to dissect plays because I'm trying to fill that void, which I can't do. But it was just hard, in the very beginning because we were still long distance. I was getting my master's. Joe was playing.
On the field,
yeah. Coach Fox died the Thursday before his first career start, and so at right tackle, sorry. And so it was just very hard. And then there was a lot of things that happened between then him not re-signing with the Rams, which is something he really wanted to do. Him switching agents, like it was just so much other drama that happened between the Coach Fob's death that we probably don't even have time to dive into. But Coach Fob's dying was like the tip of the iceberg. There was a lot more that came after that, just with family and everything. And this was all before we got married.
If anyone's looking for a Netflix miniseries.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, but I'm not kidding though. I'm not kidding. I was just saying to Cynthia before, there's so much to this story that I know we could be on for 5 hours, but I know none of us can be on for 5 hours. So true. I'm thinking like, part 2, part 3, part 4, but I mean, that is, I'm sorry, Brie, continue, but I 100%, there's so much that you guys can share
in that story. And so even when I think about how we're jumping from scenario to scenario, when he did meet Kobe Bryant, it was very, I don't want to say funny, but he said Kobe Bryant came to the team and he said, hey, if any of you guys ever want to talk to me, just come to my office. It's right here in this building. And so Joe was like, I think I'm going to send him a DM on Instagram. And I was like, oh, okay, which I knew wasn't going to work. And so he comes to me like a week or two later. He goes, he never hit me back. And I was like, well, Kobe doesn't come off as the guy that's checking his DMs all the time. But I said, but I can guarantee you as someone who's been to business school, if somebody says, come to my office, they say that openly because they know nobody will. And I said, so if you actually show up at his office, you will be the only person that does, because I guarantee you nobody else will. And sure enough, he was like, he's very nervous, very shy. He's like, what if I get there and he kicks me out? I'm like, but he actually invited all of you. And so he gets there, and I just remember him being gone most of the day. And so I was like, hey, how'd it go? He's like, man, it was great. And we talked. And I was like, yeah. I was like, did he get your DM? He goes, no, actually, he doesn't. He has a team for his social media. I was like, oh, imagine that. But either way, when he said there was, something else there, we were no longer living in California. It was the middle of COVID. Joe had retired. Obviously,
got angry.
He was very angry at that point because, it's one thing to pivot. It's another thing to pivot and then your plan doesn't go seamless. Like your plan has to pivot because now there's COVID and there's
right.
no performances anywhere. And we're all in the house with 2 kids under 3. It's a lot of pivoting that goes on.
Because I left football to be available for music shows.
Yeah.
So, right. It's like,
yeah. So there was a lot of, things that went on, I think, during those times. And those losses were tremendous. But I think for me, it was just about letting him know I'm there. I try to give him his space to process on his own. We found a very good therapist that he's actually met with for most of this time in California. And
still now.
And yeah, he still meets with her. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Bless you.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you on the first one.
Not COVID, is it? No, I'm just playing.
You never know, right?
She does a good job with him. I love her. She, it's interesting because I always tell people, especially women. I have a lot of male friends, so I'm just now new to having female friends. But when they're like, "Oh, you would let him have a female therapist," and I'm like, yes, girl, I can't do this by myself. Like, yeah,
my God, so awesome.
I know that he's more open with females and more comfortable, and so she's like part of the team. If you were part of the family, like there's times where he'll come to me with something, and I'm like, that's more of a Kamala question. I think you need to talk to someone.
That's fantastic. Honest to God.
Yeah.
But again, that's why I say I'm older now. Back in the day, I would have probably Googled it and tried this. This is what you need to do. Yeah, like now I'm like, okay, there's experts out there, and it's very important to get in touch with those experts.
Right.
That's
Oh my, okay. I'm just like freaking out because
I know.
like there's so many, you guys are offering so much great advice just by telling your story, you know, just in terms of speaking, opening up, getting help, going to therapy. These are just incredible things. And I think it's important to say, and Joe, you already said it once, is that, you know, this is who you are and what you are. It's like a tattoo. It's not going away. So there isn't like an end to depression. You know, there isn't, it's you're for the rest of your life, it's how you're going to kind of deal with it, right? And speak about it and help yourself through it. So ongoing therapy is so important for you. And I feel like this is something that you guys are doing as a team.
Yeah, because there's days I don't want to go. I mean, there's days I don't want to take my medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we definitely do it as a team.
And just to be clear, one of the best things I did for myself was go to my own separate therapist, and you know, that's easy. But I just was like, you know, I'm not perfect, and I know I'm not. But I really, when I met with my therapist, I remember my first question to her was, "How can I be of a better support to my husband?" Because I'm not sure what he's going through. Like the way that we think is completely different. So whereas if I'm having a bad day or a depressed, you know, moment, there's things I can do to actually get myself out of that. Whereas he can't do those things. So I had to understand it's very frustrating for somebody like myself who can do that to just be like, but hey, you know, if you go exercise and, you know, drink some green tea, then next thing you know, you won't be depressed anymore. And he's looking at me like, you sound crazy.
Right.
Like,
but that's, yeah.
And damaging that could be to our relationship if I don't realize that myself.
Right.
So there was, like I said, a lot of learning that had to go, and a lot of stuff I had to learn personally, so that we could do this. But yes, he does meet with this therapist. There'll be days where he doesn't want to go, so I'll be like, well, hey, I don't have anything on my calendar. I'll take your session.
Today may be one of those days.
Right.
But
see, there's the comedian coming out. See, we're seeing that. We got a lot of laughs. Yeah, I love it.
Right. I really would love to talk about that, you know, because that's really interesting to me. The music, it feels like a natural progression, blues with a little bit of funk and just really just like being able to like get it, you know, we're so lucky when we're able to hear people's lyrics to really hear what's going on inside through music. But comedy is really, you know, from what I understand, a lot of comedians have serious, deep kind of feelings, and they use the comedy as a way also to kind of like pull out those feelings or just kind of maybe get away from them a little bit. What do you think comedy brings to you?
Comedy's always been a shield for my emotions. Like people who know me the most, they can tell when I'm like really pissed off or really angry because I get really funny or really nervous.
Right.
Anything really. Like ever since, I mean, the molestation stuff started at like 3. You know, on top of like beatings that I did not deserve and that kind of thing. So I realized at a young age that like don't nobody care how you feel. So they don't need to know how you feel. So you need to figure out something else that's going to mask how you feel. And it became humor. Over the years, obviously, you know, the humor matured and that kind of thing. But it was actually COVID-19 that got me into comedy. I wasn't doing music shows. I went to a comedy show. I saw a comedian. He was the head. I saw the headlining comedian of that show. He was a black dude. And between me, you, and the rest of the world, this was like one of the only times I was ever ashamed to be black. That's how bad he was. Like he was so bad. The only other time I was ashamed to be black was when we were in London, England with the football team. And one of my black teammates walks up to the woman behind the counter at the hotel. "Excuse me, ma'am, something's wrong with the TV." And she's like, "Oh, what do you mean something's wrong with the TV? It's in a bad language. Like I don't understand the language." You know, she's like, "Oh, is it in Chinese or, you know, is it Japanese?" "It's English. It's just the wrong kind of English." So, yeah.
Oh my God, you're funny.
I we're not all like it. But I'm like, shit, I can do better than this. And I actually have something to say. So it took me about 3-4 months to kind of figure out like what I wanted to talk about. Because I started out as a very angry comedian, like very angry. Because I was a very angry person. I am a very angry person. And over time, wanted to say, but this is pretty much who I am on stage. I mean, there's just more jokes, but it's very conversational. Comedians have already told me that, like, I mean, I'm very open, with who I am and that kind of thing, and I'm very vulnerable with like the material I talk about. But I don't see it as like vulnerability or openness. I see it as me telling my side of the story of my life.
Right. Wow, that's
Right.
exciting. Where can we see this? Like, where can people see some of your shows? Do you have anything on YouTube?
Netflix, no, I'm not. But
Yeah.
you
I'm serious. You're
Keep
gonna get
saying
Netflix.
it. You got to put it out in the universe. Netflix,
You're gonna
Netflix.
do it.
Keep saying it because you're going to do it.
I told him, like, he has so many stories that I wouldn't be surprised if we can figure out a way to a mini series or something. Like, it's definitely possible. I will say I'm learning. I do a lot of the business side of things. And so he's working on putting everything together for a special next year. And so the thought process is not to put out, I mean, there's clips on his Instagram page, JBDale72, which you can check out.
Okay.
But put his whole shows up while he's still figuring it out. We want to record one really sounds piece and then put
45 minutes.
Yeah, publish that so that,
Nice.
you get a full show versus like bits and pieces.
Oh, that was a good joke.
Yeah, and then, it's kind of like, when you see the comedians, the famous ones, they go around and do the smaller shows. And if you go to those, you're like, that's hilarious. But then you realize if you go to the special, you've heard at least half of that. And so it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah. And you know what? Fireside has a lot of comedians that use this platform, and we can talk about that on the side later, but how to leverage Fireside for what you're doing is amazing. And anyone that wants to, as they were talking about Instagram, Brie was talking about Instagram, you can go to Joe's Instagram and check that out. That is in the fortune cookie right here. And you guys can check it out. Why don't you guys shout it out too, so they can grab it?
Oh, yes. JBDale72, JBDALE72.
And you know what? I was going to shout it out, but all of a sudden my dyslexia got in the way. And I was like, wait a second, I need to write that down. I was going to say it wrong. So I was like, let me have them too.
I love you.
I usually tell people it's easy to, like, because there aren't many autistic, mentally ill former football playing athletes named Joe Bart. So
exactly. You've got it all. That's awesome.
I love that. Well, I want to, and Cynthia, I know you want to jump. Do you want to say something first?
Yeah, I don't want to leave it because I want to say, like, so Brionna, you're in real estate now, but you started off in PR and you have your own PR business. I love that, you have your master's, you went to Michigan State, you did events from grade school to high school to Michigan State. And so I feel like, wow, this is going to be really interesting to see what role you play within this, because you've already done it all. So it's going to be exciting to see like what happens and where you guys take this. And I feel like Netflix is just the beginning. I just feel like you really have something.
I want to win the prize for American humor. Like that's, if I died without winning that award, I would feel like I failed.
All right, put it out there.
Right.
You got to put it out there, and that's what you go for. And that, creative passion.
Oh, it's like you talking about Hall of Fame. Can you get a show first? No, I'm just playing. But yeah, but that's my goal.
Love it.
Right.
Won the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. So did Dave Chappelle. I would consider them both. Those are both two people I thought about heavily when I decided to walk away from my job too. I mean, obviously Dave Chappelle's situation was different. Both of their situations were different, and they both still ended up coming back to comedy in their own ways. But it was very inspirational to me because, they dropped everything to do that. And if it wasn't for people like that, telling people like especially Pryor, like he was the first comedian I heard that had childhood similar to mine. Mm-hmm. And to hear people tell my story, or to hear people tell their stories and, me relate to it with my story and that kind of thing, it was very powerful. And I want to be that for a bunch of people.
Yeah. And Dave Chappelle, that's one of the things that I love about his comedy. He always, he's a favorite in our house, and he always ends with a really amazing message. And that's one of my favorite things about him. As funny as he is, he always leaves it with like a really serious thing to think about. So you always are laughing your ass off, like almost crying. And then all of a sudden he says this thing and you're like, wow, that was so profound. Now I'm like really deep in thinking. And I want to bring it really quickly also to the creative passion is so important. And, we've touched on so many different things, from why you played football to, your music and then into comedy. And this is something that we talk about on our podcast all the time, finding that outlet for creative passion is so important. And what I always say to people is that you need to find that place to daydream, whether it's called, some people call it meditating. I call it daydreaming. I do it when I walk my dogs. I daydream, just like things that you're saying. Like, I want this. I tell Cynthia all the time, hey, we're going to have a talk show. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Because when you put it out there and really let the universe and God, I believe in God, but you let that, kind of sit and then people are put into your life, and they're put into your life for a reason. So I want to, before, because I know we're coming sort of to an end, but I really want to talk about your autism diagnosis and like why you're in New York and Autism Speaks. And then, really what people should know about what, when they're dealing with someone with autism. And I don't like to say dealing, but when you're interacting with someone with autism. Well, some people, with dyslexia, people would say, I'm dealing with your spelling. I totally get it. But it is, it's one of those things, as you said, from your beginning of your story, when you got kicked out of camp because of something that you did because of autism, like adults and people need to be more aware of how they interact with children. And you bringing awareness to the story, your story is going to help. So can you touch on the autism? And I know I just probably asked you 30 things in one sentence.
But as you were talking, so it was just, we found out about the autism 3 years ago. I had been working with my therapist at that time for 3+ years. She had been observing me, but it's not one of those things where you just, all right, the session's over. By the way, you're autistic. You know what I mean? That's not how it goes. But I remember talking to her one day about how I hated being around people because I felt like I was always trying to be who I was supposed to be as a human being. But one day someone was going to realize I was different. And that kind of was what opened up the door to me meeting with a specialist and being diagnosed. I met with the specialist, and the woman's like, listen, it's going to take it's going to take some time, probably a month or two. We're going to have a couple meetings here, fill out this paperwork, that kind of thing. I came back to the first meeting. All right, let me look at the paperwork. All right, halfway through our conversation, we're not going to need to have any more meetings. You are autistic.
Wow.
But it was explained to me as difficulty understanding yourself and your emotions and difficulty understanding others and their emotions and everything that involves, processing how you feel, not even knowing, sometimes I'm pissed off. I don't even know why. Or my feelings would be really hurt, and it won't be till hours later that I figured out why they were hurt or that kind of thing. I can't put myself in other people's shoes. I take everything literally. When someone said the other day, oh, I see you out here in the neck of the wood. What neck is in the wood? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's different symptoms and there is a spectrum.
Yes.
So different people, it's just like stats. Someone's stats may be really high in one area, really low in another area, and then as you move across the spectrum, that graph just, and there's no two people on the exact same part of the spectrum. I am high functioning autistic, but it's still all autism. They used to call it Asperger's, but now it's just all the autism spectrum.
Gotcha.
It is a mental disorder. I feel like the state of Texas should give me a handicapped driver's license. I need those parking benefits. I have.
No, I love that
I love it.
I love that we're learning the spectrum. I feel like this is something that is, that we're all becoming more and more aware of, that there is a spectrum and what that actually means, which is so many different levels. And you still respect the diagnosis, but it is what it is. And you are who you are with, high functioning autistic, and I think that's wonderful for parents, young parents, people, adults, children to hear you talk about, because
and it's not something you can catch. I know sometimes people are oh, these shots are giving people autism. Autism is the way that your brain is hardwired. You were born autistic or not autistic. So that too, because
right.
You don't catch autism.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Like dyslexia, I was born with it. My dad has it. My son has it. My grandfather had it. My sister has it. It's one of those things that, ADHD, the same. There's the spectrums of all of that stuff. And when you look at it and growing up, having, and I always say, when, learning differences, my son always is I hate when people say learning differences or learning disorders. It is, it's different things, but then you have your strengths, right? Because we talk about this on the podcast all the time. I know my dyslexia brought me so many things that I learned as a kid that were hard, but it made me the woman I am today. And it made me the have the grit and the drive to do so many more things. Like I'm not afraid of failing because I've failed so many different times. So I will tackle anything. And all my friends, anyone knows, you give me a business idea, you say, hey, do you want to go run and try to do that? And I'll do it because I'm not afraid of failure. What do you think with autism being diagnosed later in life? I was diagnosed with dyslexia later in life as well. So what do you think as a kid and then growing up and then you learning, okay, I'm autistic. What do you think the autism did for you in a positive way? Like, what do you think it gave you to be the man that you are today?
It just made me more comfortable with myself. Yeah, that's I mean, that's a big thing, but yeah, like it made me comfortable. You know, I am who I am, and that's the only person I can be. So I may as well be that person. You know, like Dr. Seuss says, you know, be yourself and speak your, you know, say what you mean and be yourself. Those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. So.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
From the Dr. Seuss. That's what.
Straight from the doctor.
But you know, and Joe, and I love that you said that because it is really thing. And that's when, you know, I want everyone that's listening, if you feel like, okay, maybe my son or someone or my daughter or I have, you know, I've always done things a little different, go and get diagnosed. Because I know for my son, when he was in 3rd grade and school was really hard for him, when he got the diagnosis of dyslexia and then we really broke it down for him, he was like, oh, thank God I'm not dumb. Right? It's because my brain works different. I remember when he said that to me and I was like, dude, I totally understand what you're saying. Because I remember being in the classroom and being like, why does everyone else understand what's going on? But for me, communicating, and he's the same way, we are so good at communicating, but what we say in our, like what we can verbalize, if I went to go write down half of what I'm saying, it literally looks like it wouldn't come across. And so we learn the things that we're good at. We learn how to take those differences and then make them positive and then use them as strengths and know, okay, this is a weakness. So, can I and I know we're coming to an end here, but I would love to kind of end with like Brionna and Joe. So knowing that Joe is autistic, how is it to raise 2 girls, knowing that, maybe you're going to do things a little different? Can you guys take us through that a little bit?
So far it's been fine. Joe, I will say, because of his autism diagnosis, it made some things make more sense to me. So like he hears sounds differently than I do. And I'm very good, like most moms, at tuning out anything I choose. And so the kids could be crying and I'd be like, that's a attention cry. They're fine. But for him, it's like somebody scratching a chalkboard and he's like, hey, is there anything we could do? And I'm like, okay. So we've had a lot of conversations because on one hand, he prefers, you know, when he wants it to be quiet so his mind can try, like he wants it to be quiet. And I'm like, well, realize that me getting the kids to be quiet means they always get what they want. So we have to figure out a balance there. They can't always get everything they want so that the house can be quiet. So there's been a lot.
Janae is part of that too with the kids.
Well, yeah, but that's a whole story.
That's real.
Like I said, there's a lot of stories we're skipping over, but that was another traumatic loss he had when he was younger and he lost his best friend. So, but that's why he doesn't like to hear the crying of the girls. Because
I think someone's being murdered.
Yeah. But I will say there's been like certain things that have happened in his life. I think when we talk about our kids, we just take it one day at a time. We do realize one of them or both of them may be autistic or high functioning or, you know, whatever. But we do give them the space to be themselves. I think because of his diagnosis, and I always remind him of this, especially because a lot of the stuff we're discussing today, there's still daily struggles. Like we'll log off and it'll be like, ha ha ha. And I don't know when the next moment could be where he's having a really bad moment. But because of that, we take it one day at a time. And I told him, like, because of your ability to be here and have these conversations, I'll be a better mom to our daughters. Because I'll have somebody like firsthand to be able to say, like, no, be patient with her. I remember feeling like this, or I remember what that was like. Whereas I'm like, what's wrong with, you know, the kid, or, you know, whatever. So, you know, I like I said, we take it one day at a time, and we try not to take ourselves too seriously. The comedy helps a lot. But it's just it's a daily like daily. I don't want to say challenge. It's just like we just handle it by the day.
Yeah, take it day to day. Take
Yeah.
it day by day.
And that's how, you know, oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I meet with a therapist twice a week, and I meet with a psychiatrist as well, because I know that the best me that I can be will be the best me for my family. So that's very important. Like, it's very important to me that those kids grow up in a completely different mental state than I. You know what I mean? Like, I would feel like I failed as a parent. If I grew up more like me mentally, not from an autistic standpoint, just from like
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Which is so beautiful. And this is the thing that you're breaking the cycle of what happened to you. And that's what's so important for your story. And that's why I thank you so much for joining us and sharing it and being so open, because your story is going to help so many people realize, wait, I can break the cycle too. Like you've had a story. Go ahead.
It's not easy. I know. I mean, because we talk about all the time, like, not we, but as a society, we talk about breaking generational curses and breaking the cycle. It's not easy. Like, I don't need anybody going into it with false pretenses like, oh, this autistic, mentally ill football player do it. I can do it, but it's a very lonely road, and there's a lot of struggle that comes with it. But it's not easy. But nothing worth doing is easy. So.
Right.
Right.
And that's beautifully said. And so, do you guys have any closing remarks? Again, I have so many questions, and we could literally go on for hours. I find you guys amazing and just love everything you're saying. But you know, we told you we're going to be an hour, and I know that you know, we have time. But so, do you have anything that you want to close with, add, and then Cynthia, I'm going to say the same thing to you as well.
Drink more Ovaltine. I'm just playing. I'm thinking.
Cynthia, do you want, as you think, Cynthia or Bree, if you want to, you know, have any closing remarks?
I'll just say from, you know, my point of view as his wife, because I've had several wives reach out to me since we've retired, just with different stories of their husbands going through either depressive episodes or, you know, they kind of don't know the next steps, and they know Joe's been very open, but maybe their husband's not comfortable contacting Joe. You know, us women are different. You know, be patient, because that's one thing Joe will tell you. I, for some reason, have been blessed with an abundance of patience, which sometimes irritates me. But I will say that it's something that Joe does the work, and I just support the work that he does. I do feel like I've had people who are very, you know, you need to do this, and it never really works out that way. But maybe let's do this together, or, you know, that positive reinforcement, because, you know I have a lot of male friends that don't like having certain conversations with their significant other because they just feel like they can't talk openly without it being like an attack. And so it's kind of one of those situations where you take it in, give yourself some time, and then, you know, be patient and know that it's going to take a while. But that would be my biggest, like, takeaway is, like, have patience. It's not like we're talking about years. I mean, 2014 to 2022, you know, years. It's not like an overnight thing. Nothing happens overnight. So that's my remark. Be patient, and then just, you know, be there. But yeah.
So appreciate that.
Right. I think that's such excellent advice, because, you know, as we said in the beginning, we are all so different. We're different as individuals. We're different as couples. We're different. We have different experiences in the league and in life. So yes, patience and being kind and patient and supportive is one thing. And also realizing that, as you said earlier, you might not have all the answers, or you might not be the best person to talk to. So go outside of your, you know, unit and seek help elsewhere. You know, it's also something that I take away from, you know, your experience, that getting help outside of the, you know, the home is awesome too. So thank you guys so much I'm telling you, you're going to end up with a show, a series. You're going to
big time.
This story, your lives, the way your mindset is, it's incredible, and a lot of people need to know about it. And I can't wait to share it, you know, through this and any way I can.
Joe, do you have any remarks that you want to end with? And it's okay to say no.
I'm gonna get that award one day. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I have to say that like now because it's easy to say now as interviews are going, but I'm gonna get that award one day.
You are. And we're going to say, guess what? Guess where you heard it first? YNS Live with NFL Thread, Pivot on Fireside.
Somebody told you about a major comedy award on a sports. How did that happen? Hey.
Because we all have our passions. We all have our passions and we all follow things. And, I know on the side, I know Brionna, Cynthia. So Cynthia has an organization called NFL Thread, and we're going to cut this, but definitely want to talk to you about it because it is a LinkedIn for women of the NFL. And there's so many events that she does supporting the community that I think it's something that you guys should definitely talk about, but we'll talk about it on the side. So I'm just going to say thank you again, Bree and Joe Barksdale, for joining YNS Live with NFL Thread Pivot. Thank you, everyone. Mark, Gina, Christy, Jennifer, Ray, Elizabeth, Truthful, Marlene, Jen, Shelby, and Daniel. Again, as I know, I said Ray, and I brought it. What is your PR woman's name? Raya.
I think it's Rail, but I'm not.
Rail. Okay. Sorry, Rail. You know what? As I was reading them, and every time I do that, I always laugh again because my dyslexia, because I pronounce people's names wrong, and I'm like, oh, why do I get into this?
Right. Oh, shoot. We're going to send you this in an email. We're not going to keep you, but because of Juliet's dyslexia, she would always talk about work ethic, but she would say worth ethic by mistake. So we would start to put out there, hey, that's a really awesome idea. What is worth ethic? So we'll send you that in an email and see what your response is. We'll give you some time to think about that.
Yeah, your worth ethic versus your work ethic.
Right.
So again, guys, thank you so much, and good luck with everything. And keep doing. The Autism Speak is amazing. They're lucky to have you out there, talking about it and everything that you're doing in the community. Again, thank you guys so much for joining, and we wish you all the luck. And we know we're going to have you on again, and we're going to be out there cheering for your awards.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys.
Yes, thank you.
See ya.
A little music to take us out. Of course, it's a polka.
That doesn't work.
That does not work. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining YNS Live with NFL Thread Pivot. We will talk to you guys later. Thank you, Barksdales. Bye.